You guys often ask for updates on these stories, but usually, once the police report is filed, that's the end of it. Not this time.
It's midnight. You're relaxing in a heated pool with your friends. Suddenly, the music stops.
The scariest part of this story isn't the break-in. It's the realization that the intruders didn't just disappear.
Think you're brave enough to handle what comes next? Prove it. Hit subscribe to Nightmare right now. Let's see how long you last.
A lot of you have mentioned in the comments that you enjoy hearing updates on stories that promise them. Until now, I haven't really made a dedicated video focusing on updates. Mostly because people who submit their stories rarely follow up. However, an anonymous viewer who submitted a pretty terrifying beach story back in July of 2024 recently reached out with a major update. So, I'm going to play the original story first, just in case you missed it or need a refresher. And then we'll get straight into the new details right after. Beaches have always terrified me. Well, not always. My fear is a direct result of what I'm about to tell you. As a kid, I used to love the shore. I remember spending my summers in eager anticipation of the weekends, when my family would head down to our beach house. Or, if I was really lucky, my parents would let me stay at my friend Charles's beach house, which was always way more fun because his parents were a lot more lenient than mine. I was 16 when this happened. It was one of those special summer weekends where the stars aligned. My parents said yes. Charles's parents said yes. And we had the place to ourselves. It was me, Charles, and our other friend Riley, who was a year older and had just gotten his license. That meant we could drive ourselves down in his car, unsupervised. The drive down to Long Beach Island, or LBI, was fantastic. Riley was a terrible driver, swerving, cursing at every car that passed him, but we spent the whole ride laughing our heads off. We felt like kings. We got to LBI in good time, and dumped our bags in the bedrooms. The layout of Charles's house is actually really important to understand what happened later, so let me paint a picture for you. There's the main front door, and then a garage door that connects the back of the house to the front yard. There's a sliding glass door in the back living room, and an upstairs deck that connects the bedrooms. There's also this metal spiral staircase that goes from the top deck down to the ground, so you can sneak in and out without using the main doors. The house sits right on a lagoon, so the backyard isn't grass. It's a bulkhead facing a narrow channel of dark water, with a row of identical houses on the opposite side. At 16, our priorities were simple: girls and partying. A beach house to ourselves was the ultimate setup. We spent the first few hours scrolling through Snapchat, trying to figure out who was down the shore for the weekend. We eventually found a group of 3 girls, Rosie, Alexa, and Sophie, who were down to come hang out. We were set. I had brought enough weed to last the weekend, and we had raided our parents' liquor cabinets before leaving. The girls arrived, and things were going great. They were fun, flirty, and the night felt like it was heading exactly where we wanted it to go. Around midnight, the 6 of us decided to go out back and smoke in the pool. It was small, but the heated water felt amazing against the cool bay breeze. We were passing a joint around, music playing softly from a Bluetooth speaker, steam rising into the night air. It was pure bliss. But then, Charles suddenly reached over and turned the music all the way down. The vibe instantly shifted. "What are you doing?" I asked, laughing a little. Charles didn't laugh. He was staring over my shoulder, out across the dark water of the lagoon. He whispered. "Look." I turned around, squinting into the darkness. At first, I didn't see anything, just the black water and the faint outline of the docks on the other side. "What?" I asked. "There's someone on the dock across from us," Charles whispered. I laughed again. "Bro, people live there. It's probably just the neighbors." Charles shook his head slowly, his eyes never leaving the other side of the lagoon. "I know that family. My parents told me they're in Florida for the week. Their house is supposed to be empty." That gave me a slight chill, but I still thought he was just trying to scare the girls. "You're messing with us," I said. "I'm serious," he hissed. The girls were starting to get freaked out now. Rosie asked if we could go back inside. I wasn't going to argue. The mood was dead. We started climbing out of the pool, grabbing our towels. As we were drying off on the deck, Riley suddenly jumped and swore. "Whoa, what the hell?" He was pointing toward the water. We all turned. Even in the dim light, I could see ripples breaking the surface of the lagoon. It looked like movement coming from the dock Charles had been staring at. Just then, a car drove down the street on the opposite side of the canal. Its headlights swept across the dock for a split second, lighting up the scene. My stomach dropped. Standing at the very edge of the opposite dock were 4 tall silhouettes. They were perfectly still, facing directly at us. It was too dark to make out faces or clothes, but there was no doubt they were watching us. "Go inside," Charles said, his voice trembling. Now, we started shuffling toward the sliding glass door, and that's when we heard it. Splash, splash, splash. Splash. 4 distinct heavy splashes hit the water behind us. "They jumped in," Riley screamed. "They're swimming across." Panic took over. The girls started screaming as we scrambled into the living room. Riley slammed the sliding door shut and fumbled with the lock. Charles sprinted to the front door to bolt that one too. We killed the lights and ran into the downstairs hallway, huddling in a corner where we couldn't be seen from the windows. We waited in silence, our breathing loud and ragged. A minute passed. Then 2. "Wait," Riley whispered, his face going pale. "The upstairs deck." "What?" Charles asked. "The slider upstairs," Riley stammered. I left it unlocked to let the smoke out earlier." Charles looked like he was about to throw up. The spiral staircase outside led directly to that deck. If they climbed the stairs, they could walk right in. Before we could even move, we heard a sound of wet footsteps on floorboards above thump. Squish. Heavy, wet footsteps on the floorboards directly above our heads. They were inside. "Run," I yelled. We bolted for the front door, unlocked it, and sprinted for Riley's car. We piled in, screaming at him to start the engine. Riley was shaking so bad he could barely get the key in the ignition. Finally, the car roared to life. He threw it in reverse and floored it, smashing straight through Charles's mailbox as we peeled out of the driveway. We didn't stop until we were 3 towns over. We called the police from a gas station parking lot. We went back to the house a few hours later. After the police had swept it, the place was trashed. All the electronics and valuables from the upstairs bedrooms were gone. But that wasn't the worst part. Charles's family owned a Boston Whaler boat that was docked out back. It was gone. The police concluded that the intruders had swum across, broken in through the upstairs slider, grabbed whatever they could carry, and then found the spare boat keys that Charles's dad kept hidden in a hatch under the steering wheel. They had used the boat as their getaway vehicle. How they knew exactly where the keys were hidden, that's something that still haunts me. The police never caught them. The boat was never recovered. We always suspected it had to be someone who knew the family, someone who knew the house was empty and where the keys were, but we never got answers. I haven't slept with the door unlocked since that night. Okay, so that was the original story. It's been years since I submitted that, and honestly, I never thought I'd be thinking about it again. But life has a weird way of circling back. I recently attended my high school reunion. I wasn't planning on going, but my girlfriend convinced me it would be fun to see everyone. I was dreading it, but as soon as I walked in, I saw Charles. We hadn't really kept in touch after college. You know how it goes. Life gets in the way, but seeing him brought it all back. Riley was there too, and after the reunion wrapped up, Charles asked if we wanted to grab a beer at a dive bar nearby to catch up properly. Riley couldn't make it, but I went. We were a few beers in, reminiscing about the old days, when the conversation inevitably turned to that night at the beach house. I asked him if his parents ever heard anything about the boat or the guys who took it. Charles put his beer down and got a strange look on his face. He leaned in and lowered his voice. "Actually," he said, "something weird happened with that last year." I pulled out my phone and wrote down notes as he spoke, because I wanted to get the details right for this update. Charles told me that his younger brother, Kieran, is 19 now. Apparently, Kieran and his friends are even wilder than we were. About a year ago, Kieran and 2 buddies decided to borrow the family's new boat, the one they bought with the insurance money from the stolen whaler. They took it out without asking, loaded up a cooler of beer, and headed out for a joyride. This was already stupid and illegal, but they decided to take it a step further. They anchored the boat near Carvel Island. Now, for those who don't know the area, Carvel Island is part of the Forsyth Wildlife Refuge. It's dense, undeveloped, and technically restricted. You aren't supposed to be there, especially not at night. Their plan was to anchor as close as they could, swim to shore, and hang out on the deserted beach to drink and watch the stars. So, they swim ashore, drag themselves onto the sand, and find a spot to hang out. The sun starts to set, and it's getting dark. They're joking around, drinking beers, when one of Kieran's friends points down the shoreline. "Is that another boat?" he asked. That was the breaking point. We had no weapons. We were drunk, and there were 4 intruders upstairs. We didn't wait to find out what they wanted. Kieran looked. Anchored about 100 yards down the beach, tucked into a small cove, was a white boat. It looked abandoned. Kieran squinted at it. The shape was familiar. The size was familiar. That looks exactly like our old whaler, Kieran said. His friends laughed it off. Dude, all Boston whalers look the same. But Kieran wouldn't let it go. He had grown up on that boat. He knew the specific dent in the railing, the way the bimini top sat. He was convinced. Against his friends' protests, Kieran insisted they swim out to it to get a closer look. They waded back into the water and swam toward the mystery boat. The closer they got, the more Kieran's heart started to pound. He recognized the custom rod holders his dad had installed. He recognized the fading decal on the side. "It's the boat," Kieran whispered, treading water next to the hull. "I swear to God, this is the stolen boat." He wanted to take a picture, but they had left their phones back on their own boat. It was getting dark fast. If they swam back to get their phones, they wouldn't be able to see anything by the time they returned. One of his friends suggested calling the police, but Kieran panicked. They were underage, drinking, boating without a license, and trespassing on a wildlife refuge. Calling the cops meant getting arrested. "Let's just go back to our boat," Kieran said. "We'll drive it over here, shine the spotlight on it, take a picture, and then leave." They turned around and started swimming back to shore. They decided to cut across the beach to get back to their boat faster. They dragged themselves out of the water, shivering, and started walking briskly across the sand. The moon was just starting to rise, casting long shadows across the dunes. Suddenly, Kieran's friend grabbed his arm. "Stop." Kieran looked back. About 50 yards behind them, emerging from the tall dune grass near the stolen boat, was a man. He was walking toward them. Kieran stopped breathing. The man wasn't shouting. He wasn't waving. He was just walking, his pace steady and purposeful. And he was dragging something. Kieran squinted. In the moonlight, the object glinted. It looked like a shovel. "Run," Kieran whispered. The moment they started running, the man's pace changed. He broke into a sprint. The three boys tore across the sand, adrenaline surging through their veins. The man was fast. He was gaining on them, the shovel swinging in his hand. They reached the water's edge and dove in, swimming frantically toward their boat. Kieran looked back over his shoulder. The man had stopped at the shoreline. He stood there, watching them swim, the shovel resting on his shoulder. Then, he turned and sprinted back toward the other boat. The boys scrambled onto their boat, heaving and gasping. Kieran fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so bad he dropped them twice. Finally, the engine roared to life. But here's the kicker. In the bay, there are strict speed limits and lighting regulations at night. If they went full throttle, they'd attract the Coast Guard immediately. So they had to idle away slowly, terrified that the other boat was going to roar up behind them out of the darkness. Kieran swore to Charles that on the ride back, over the sound of their own engine, he could hear the faint hum of another motor in the distance. Following them, they made it back to the dock and sprinted to the house. Kieran was so shaken up that he broke down and told his parents everything the next morning, leaving out the beer. Of course, his dad was furious, obviously, but he called the police. They reported the sighting of the stolen boat and the man on the island. But just like the first time, nothing happened. The police went out to Carvel Island a few days later, but the mystery boat was gone. They found disturbed sand where Kieran described the man coming from. But no body, no buried treasure, nothing. When Charles finished telling me this, I had so many questions. How could a stolen boat be operating in the same area for years without being noticed? Why anchor it so close to shore on a restricted island? Charles thinks whoever stole it probably stripped the registration numbers and repainted it. It's easy to blend in when there are thousands of boats in the bay. As for the man on the island, that's the part that really gets to me. What was he doing out there in the middle of the night with a shovel? Was he burying something? Or was he digging something up? And why did he chase 3 teenagers with it? It makes me wonder if the theft of the boat wasn't just a random robbery. Maybe they needed that specific boat because they knew the family, knew the keys were there, and needed a vehicle that couldn't be traced back to them for whatever illicit activities they were up to on that island. Charles said his brother hasn't gone back on the water since. And honestly, I don't blame him. We finished our beers and said goodbye. Driving home that night, I couldn't stop checking my rearview mirror. It's unsettling to think that the people who terrorized us that night are still out there, still local, and still operating in the shadows. So, if you're ever near Carvel Island at night and see a white Boston whaler anchored in the dark, turn around and don't look back.